doing things is sometimes even more helpful. So if you think what we're doing here tonight is important,
thanks, Ellie, very much, and everyone who helps to make these events happen. It's really refreshing to see people engaged in their community and wanting to make a difference politically. And I'm really, this is the third time I've been to the Freedom Forum, and I'm really excited tonight to announce the official kickoff of our recall of Sheriff Phil Wowak from the Office of Sheriff Coroner here in Santa Cruz County. And I'm particularly excited because he showed up tonight, and which is, you know, awesome. I think it's great. We've been wanting to speak with him and debate the issues and talk about the issues and the role of the sheriff for a long time. You know, I think it'll be a good dialogue, and I hope we can keep it respectful, and we can have a dialogue. I think all of us here in our various ways have the best interest of the Santa Cruz community at heart. So, yeah. So, why are we wanting to recall the sheriff? It hasn't happened for a long time, is my understanding, in Santa Cruz County. But there are some very important reasons why we've taken this step, why members of the community have decided that the sheriff is not fulfilling his duty to the people, and why we've taken the step of launching a recall petition. Now, this will take place over the next, I think, approximately 4.5 months. We have to collect approximately 14,000 signatures, which is 10% of the registered voters of Santa Cruz County. It's not impossible. It's a tall order, and it means that people need to be engaged and contribute their time and money and energy into this effort. But why are we talking about this at all? Well, on January 11th, the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors passed ordinance number 5084, which prohibited Pacific Gas and Electric or any other utility from installing smart meters, wireless smart meter devices, gas or electric, on any business or home in the county of Santa Cruz. That ordinance was passed unanimously by the board, and it was in response to a drumbeat of citizens coming forward and speaking up to the board, not only about how people were being injured by smart meters in other areas of the state and smart meters that had already been installed in Santa Cruz County, but how people are increasingly being injured by wireless devices in general. And now smart meters are a very powerful wireless device. PG&E claims that they are only 1,000th the power of a cell phone, something like that, and that they only radiate 45 seconds a day. The truth is that the cumulative whole body exposure of a smart meter is approximately 100 to 150 times the strength of a cell phone, according to Dan Hirsch, a nuclear policy expert from UC Santa Cruz, who did the analysis. And the 45 seconds a day that PG&E claims is technically correct, but that 45 seconds is divided into 15,000 or more millisecond bursts throughout the day. So they send a signal about every 5 or 6 seconds. And I understand there's a smart meter now on this building. I was just sitting here with a measuring device, and we were noticing the spikes about every 6 seconds. So this is something that is fundamentally changing the physical environment, not only here in this room where we're sitting, but throughout the county. And that's the point. This is not, PG&E would like to present this as an individual thing. Well, you don't want a smart meter on your house, you don't have to have one, you can pay us hundreds of dollars and you can opt out. That's their ideal solution. But the reality is that living in a society which is increasingly burdened with microwave radiation in all its forms, from cell towers, Wi-Fi, cell phones, baby monitors, smart meters, we're reaching a point where the smart meters might be the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of exceeding our natural ability to absorb microwave radiation. Now, we evolved without any exposure to microwave radiation at all, or very minimal. The only natural sources of microwaves in that frequency that we're talking about is from lightning, which is obviously quite rare. And interestingly enough, the redwood trees evolved a natural resistance to microwave radiation. So if you have a house made of redwood, it's better insulating against microwaves than other woods, and there may be a reason for that. Redwoods tend to be the tallest trees. They're the tallest trees on the planet, and they're subject to lightning strikes. So it was an adaptation for a redwood tree to resist microwave radiation that came naturally from lightning. But it wasn't for us. We never evolved the capacity to deal with this stuff, and now we're seeing an increasing number of people in our community who are suffering, in some cases severely, from microwave radiation. And the smart meters are about 10 times the strength in terms of peak pulse of a Wi-Fi router, approximately. And the fact that these are going off all the time and they're always chattering with each other means that people who have become sensitive, or people who were sensitive before, in some cases can no longer live in their homes comfortably or safely, or even at all. And that represents a monumental taking of private property by a private utility company and the Public Utilities Commission. And these are all, and so that's just the health aspect. Over the last 12 months, we've seen dramatic reversals from international and national health agencies about this issue. On May 31st, the World Health Organization categorized non-ionizing radiation as a class 2B carcinogen, a possible carcinogen. And the industry is very quick to note that, oh, well, you know, coffee and pickles are in the same category. But the truth is that the type of pickle that are in the category 2B carcinogen is a very rare pickle that's found in China, and the pickling agent that they use is carcinogenic. And it's notable that no substance has gone into the category of 2B, and then they decide, oh, well, it's actually not a carcinogen. The way things typically happen is that a substance comes into question, peer-reviewed research goes on that indicates that there's a problem, it goes into the possible carcinogen category, then the probable carcinogen, and then the definite carcinogen. So that's sort of as more evidence comes in. So the National Institutes of Health came out with a study that really blew some serious holes in the Federal Communications Commission's safety limits. And these safety limits are some of the highest in the world. So if these smart meters were being installed in Russia, if they were being installed in Austria, in Switzerland, in a number of other countries, they would actually exceed the safety limits set by those countries for human exposure, and they would be illegal. But the high FCC limits allow this kind of Wild West phenomena to happen, where people are putting up antennas everywhere, they're not really being measured, you know, they can basically do what they want with very little oversight. The FCC regulators come out, they measure the power, a lot of the time the cell phone companies will turn down the power before the FCC comes out, and then when they leave, they turn it back up. There's just shenanigans that you hear about where health and safety isn't put first. And interesting study in February came out, a medical researcher for the National Institutes of Health, and this was published, you know, these are the most respected national health agencies there are. The National Institutes of Health, it was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They subjected people to two conditions, double-blind experiment, to cell phone radiation, and what they found was that your brain glucose levels were increasing, and that means that somehow the microwave radiation from cell phones is stimulating the brain in a way that is not related to the thermal effect of microwave. It's not to that point where it's actually heating your tissue or burning you, but it is having a biological effect. And the FCC limits are based on this assumption that there are no non-thermal effects. It only takes into account thermal effects, which were put into place and were studied back in the 1950s and 60s, mainly through military applications and studies. So So over the last 12 months, not only have the agencies responsible for the public health and welfare come out and, and these are very, very conservative agencies. The World Health Organization is not going to talk about something being a possible carcinogen without there being pretty solid evidence. And the solid evidence in this case comes from cell phone brain tumor studies. And Hardell is a researcher who's done a number of studies. And the evidence is really in. If you look at studies that are not funded by the industry, in other words, independent studies, you will see a significant and relevant connection between brain tumors and cell phone usage. So, and I mean, I 2 years ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said that this was crazy. That it was, I would have probably told you to go away because I was busy on my cell phone conversation, and that. It was just really nuts and you're a tinfoil hat wacko and I don't have time for you. But over the past year or two, a lot of people come around to understanding the threat of wireless technology. So where does that leave us? So there's the health issue, there's also massive privacy violations. And that's one of the things I want to get across tonight is that when you're talking about law enforcement, being responsible for enforcing a law that our local democratic elected officials put into place, they're not neutral because the data that's collected from smart metering systems has already led to the arrests of people doing things in the privacy of their own home that they would have never been discovered had it not been for the smart meter recording the details of every single appliance or light switch or grow light or computer network that you turn on in your home. So law enforcement has a vested interest in seeing this system go out there and able to collect private information. Now, I've never met Sheriff Wowak before this evening. I have no reason to believe that he's not a good guy, and not in his personal life a man who cares about civil liberties and about privacy in the home. Maybe he could talk a little bit about that. But privacy is a major issue. It's a major reason why the board did what it did. There have also been accuracy issues. People have been massively overcharged. I mean, we're just inundated from all over the country now. We're getting between 1,000 and 2,000 hits a day on our website. We have people from Florida, from Oklahoma, from Georgia, Michigan, writing in saying they put the smart meter in, I'm getting charged $300. My bill has been $100 a month for as long as I can remember. There's also the growing issue of fire safety. These devices are not Underwriters Laboratory certified. The utility claims, well, they don't have to be. But every single other electric device in your house has to be. Why not the actual meter? And why wouldn't they be willing to submit it to UL testing just to show that it was completely safe because there are doubts? And about 9 months ago, a former worker of Wellington Energy came forward to us and said, look, they're not training people right, they're going out into the fields, they're being pressured by monetary incentives to install a hell of a lot of these things without making sure that they're seated correctly in the socket. And if they're not seated correctly in the socket, there's the potential of an arcing fire where a spark will jump across a gap in the contact and can ignite something. And that may have been what ignited the San Bruno blaze. We'll probably never know for sure. But all we can say for sure is that there have been meter readers walking the streets in San Bruno. They might have smelt gas and they might have alerted the authorities, and the 8 people who died might have been alive today. And the neighborhood that was destroyed might still be standing. So, on a very fundamental level, it's not a bad idea to have utility staff walking the beat, walking the neighborhood, and just checking that everything's okay. With the wireless system remotely reporting your energy usage to the utility, you don't have that on the ground double to that human factor. And of course, this is a big reason why PG&E and the other utilities are rolling the system out, because they can save a lot of money paying meter reader salaries, which are good jobs, by the way, 1,000 of which are being lost in California, at least 1,000 meter readers, and then all the associated support jobs, people who clean the uniforms, who maintain the trucks, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a bad idea at a time when we're facing a recession and possibly a depression to be getting rid of all these jobs. So there's really a lot of reasons why these things are a bad idea for the public, and quite a nifty way of making a lot of money for the utilities. And Santa Cruz County is not alone. We have seen 46 other local governments throughout the state of California demand a halt to the program. We have seen about 12 other local governments, including a Native American community up in Lake County, pass laws, join Santa Cruz County in passing laws prohibiting the installation. Now, PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission will argue that local governments do not have jurisdiction over utilities, that this is a state-regulated matter. However, in the California Constitution, local governments are given broad discretion and authority to regulate for the safety and welfare and health of the people who live in that county or in that city. And the fact is that a judge has never ruled that the PUC has sole authority over the meter program, or that PG&E can go and enforce this. And the fact is that neither the CPUC or the FCC or Congress has mandated these meters. They have authorized, the PUC has authorized PG&E and the other investor-owned utilities to roll them out, but they have not mandated it. So this whole thing that we're going to come in and everyone's going to get a smart meter, you have no choice, that's utility policy, that's not law. There's two separate things here, and that's what, there's been a great deal of misunderstanding about that. If there's someone on your property, I don't care who they are, unless they're a police or a sheriff with a warrant, you can tell them to get off your property and they have to comply or it's trespassing. That means that regardless of whether there's any opt-out or anything, if you're there and someone's on your property creating a nuisance, and believe me, these things are a nuisance, you have a right to say, get off my property, and they have to leave. And generally they do. That wasn't the case, unfortunately, the other day, last Wednesday, when a man who lives in an apartment building, who is electrosensitive, came out and asked Wellington to stop installing and to leave, and he refused. This was the same man, the same installer who we heard about 3 weeks before, had a very unpleasant encounter with another resident in the Seabright neighborhood. But what happened was, apparently, according to the resident, and we've included this, we posted it on our website, the Wellington Energy installer shoved him away on the shoulder quite hard, and then when he came back and was filming him with his camera, he reached out and grabbed the camera and smashed it. And you can see a picture of this camera, it's like broken. I mean, he must have really, you know. So this guy called the police, you know, I've been assaulted, my property's been damaged, broken. The police responded and had a long chat with the Wellington installer and discouraged the victim, the resident, from filing a report saying, oh, you know, it'll never go anywhere, and, you know, the Wellington guy's in his rights, and you shouldn't file a report, and, you know, go away, basically. And this has happened again and again. Whenever there's been a dispute between local residents and Wellington Energy and PG&E, law enforcement has always come down on the side of the corporation, of PG&E. When we were out there peacefully demonstrating at 38th and Portola at the Wellington Yard just down the road, you know, we actually called the sheriff's department and say, look, you know, they're here, they're preparing to roll out and install illegally, violating Ordinance 5084. Please come and take a citizen's arrest. They showed up with about, you know, 6 or 8 sheriff's vehicles, but instead of arresting the Wellington installers, they came and arrested us for peacefully sitting in front of the trucks, and then proceeded to escort the Wellington vehicles out into the community to install illegally. So that if you want to know why we're recalling you, Sheriff Wowak, that is why. Because we can't just stand by silent and quiet while members in our community are telling us they're hurting, are telling us now that when the smart meters are gone in, and they're probably 75% of the way installed in Santa Cruz County, if not more, that since the smart meters went in, they can't go certain places anymore. Their freedom is being restricted. They are having to look at leaving the state. They're having to look at living in their vehicles. They're having to look at living in the forest. These are very, very serious issues. And if we remain silent, if we just say, oh, well, it's the utility and it's the progress and it's what, you know, where is it going to stop? Where is it going to stop? If people are allowed to be forced from their homes, forced out of our community because of pulsing microwave devices that are being forced on our homes, that's pretty Orwellian. It's pretty fascist. And you know, I wake up every morning and I think, God, you know, because I dream about smart meters quite a lot. Unfortunately, it's like I was like rolling around at 5:30 this morning and like thinking about, you know, microwatts and milliwatts, and I really just got to, you know, take a break. But you know, we can't be silent. We've got to protest. We've got to put ourselves on the line, and that's why we are encouraging others and encouraging the community to organize and get together and take direct action and peaceful civil disobedience. And there's a long history in our society of where the harm to the community of a certain policy is so overt and so obvious, and yet the policy and the laws, well, in this case the laws are consistent with it, we're just not getting enforcement. But society as a whole has yet to sort of embrace this idea that wireless can be harmful. And that when there's that differential between the reality and the perception, or the reality and the policy, there's a tension. And you know, it's possible that black people would not have the right to, you know, that there would still be segregation if people had not broken the law, and that there would still be slavery if people had not broken the law, and women would not have the right to vote if people had not broken the law. And in some case, you know, and this is a threat to the system, because if you commit acts of civil disobedience based on, you know, your morality, what it's saying is there's a higher law that exists, and that the state does not have a monopoly on what is right and wrong. That often the state gets it quite wrong because of corruption or for whatever reason. And civil disobedience, people standing up for what they believe in, is an embarrassment, because it's a statement that the policies and the laws of the state are not protecting people, and they're not doing what they should be doing. So the other day I live in Scotts Valley, and just off of, you know, Granite Creek Road, and we've been talking to our neighbors, and a lot of people are very alarmed about this, and together we've established a smart meter free zone, put up signs, and a lot of signs went up on telephone poles, and the council hassled us about it, threatened us with some injunctions. So in response, a lot of the neighborhood put these signs up in their front yards. And you know, we've been watching our neighborhood, we've been patrolling it, and the other day I was out on my bike and came across a Wellington Energy truck installing smart meters in our neighborhood, you know, in the smart meter free zone. So we have the county who's passed a law against these things. We have the city of Scotts Valley who's demanded a halt and joined petitions at the PUC demanding a halt. We have the neighborhood saying we don't want these things, and yet Wellington is installing. This was last week. And I politely came up to the guy, and he rolled down his window. Actually, I think he rolled up his window and drove away, and it was a cul-de-sac, so we had to turn around. And I rode my bike up, and then I stood in the road, and I blocked him. And, you know, I mean, okay, yeah, that's breaking the law. I was obstructing traffic. But this guy was installing meters that are hurting people, and that's violent. And what I did is nonviolent, and there's a big difference there. But, so the guy gets on his cell phone, and he calls the police. And I'm standing there with my bike, and about 20 minutes pass, and a couple of neighbors come up, see what's happening. I explain to them, and they're like, oh, wow, that's, you know, I didn't even know they were installing. I thought the county had passed the law. Isn't someone enforcing it? And I had to explain the whole thing to them, and that, you know, there's a recall effort, and you need to lock up your meter if you really don't want one of these smart meters. And 20 minutes later, the police showed up and had a long chat with the installer, and chatted with me and said, look, you know, you're liable to be arrested if you continue to stand in front of the truck. You're obstructing traffic. I think he said you're kidnapping, or you're holding him, you're imprisoning him. You know, like the vehicle has become the man, and the man has become the vehicle, or something. But anyway, at that point, a neighbor comes up, and he says, yeah, this guy came to my house a couple hours before and I told him to get off my property. I don't want one of these things. I think that they're hazardous. I think that they're lethal. I think that they're dangerous. And I totally support what this guy's doing. And at that point, you know, he was wearing shorts and he rolled up his shorts and there's a tumor on his leg the size of an orange. And he's like, I used to work for a tech company. I kept my cell phone in my back pocket right where the tumor was for 10 years. And he had another tumor on his ear on the same side that he talked on. And I looked at the cop, I'm like, we're not making this up. You know, this is really serious. This is affecting people. Wireless technology is hurting people. And, you know, the police officer really looked taken aback. I mean, I think he probably thought that we were just, you know, some hippies worried about something, you know, and they have a right to install it authorized by the PUC and whatnot. But he he didn't know what to say. He was really speechless for a minute. And I went back yesterday to interview this neighbor of mine who didn't want to appear on camera, but I got an audio interview with him and I got a picture of his tumor. And he wants people to know that this is real, that this is a threat. And he doesn't have health insurance. And he hasn't even been to the doctor to check this out. And so he's looking at having to go with his wife to Indonesia to get health coverage. And so this is like what this country's coming to. We can't take care of our own when we get sick. We're not passing laws to protect them from getting sick in the first place. And in fact, we're going in the exact opposite direction of what we need to be, the direction we need to be going, which is to rewire our communication systems, to rewire our Wi-Fi, is to you know, really limit the use of cell phones, and to dial down the limits that the FCC sets for safe human exposure to microwave radiation. And instead, we're putting out pulsing, high-level microwave emitting devices on everyone's home. And as a result of that, there have been thousands. I think it's probably up in 5,000 or 6,000. We don't know. We haven't got the latest number. But when we did a Freedom of Information Act request to the PUC, this was in, I think it was January or February, there were about 2,000 or 3,000 health complaints to the PUC from all over California, areas where smart meters have been installed. Headaches, nausea, dizziness, insomnia, ringing in the ears, the same symptoms, consistent with the peer-reviewed studies that have documented health effects in your cell towers and other microwave radiation sources. And yet, the PUC says, oh, people are just making it up. People are just psychosomatic. You know, they claim that there's health effects. So clearly there's something going on here, and the longer that time goes on, the more untenable the position of the utilities and of the Public Utilities Commission and of the legislature who's covering for them and law enforcement who's failing to enforce this ordinance that should be a priority. Because obviously there's a lot of needs in the community for the police to keep us safe, the police and the sheriff to do their job. There's a lot of demand on officers' time. But the priority should be on protecting our safety, on protecting the public health and safety. And what we said at the press conference when we announced our intention to initiate this recall was that microwave radiation might be invisible. You might not be able to taste it or smell it or see it or touch it, but it is just as harmful, if not more so. It's more insidious than a gun, than violence from a gun or a knife or a fist. And we tried multiple times to meet with our sheriff to explain this because we don't blame him and most of society doesn't understand that it's dangerous. But we wanted to sit down, we wanted to bring some people, some electrosensitive people, some people who've been suffering from this, and meet with him and talk about science and really let him know that we need him to enforce the law for our safety. And we're still willing to have that debate and have that discussion and have that open dialogue and to introduce you to people who are hurting and encourage you to change your mind and see this as a priority to protect the community, even at this 11th hour when most of the meters have been installed. So, yeah, and the other thing about this is that, you know, a Wellington Energy installer who was installing illegally the other day when he assaulted this Santa Cruz resident, that wasn't in the Sentinel. That wasn't covered by the Santa Cruz Sentinel. It wasn't covered by the TV news stations. It was on Indie Media. It was covered on our website. It was covered on Free Radio Santa Cruz and on KSCO. We certainly...
It's going to be in the good times.
It's going to be in the good times. Thank you for the good times. Yeah. And, you know, it's just, it's like, why? You know, this is relevant. This is newsworthy. You know, if you want, interview the Wellington installers, get his side of the story, get the resident. But, like, you know, people need to know about this. You know, law enforcement just hasn't done its job, and unfortunately that's just typically and historically the way it is that law enforcement tends to side with the corporations and the powers that be and the wealth against the popular interest and the interest of the public being healthy and safe. And we're not saying that that can't change. We would certainly welcome that. But it just doesn't ring true when, you know, you say you don't have the resources to enforce the law, enforce Ordinance 5084, when a handful of peaceful protesters down at 38th and Portola warrants a dozen patrol cars and like riot police showing up. You know, sitting in front of a truck is not endangering anyone's health or safety. It might be inconveniencing a corporation. It might be costing them money even. But it's not hurting anyone. It's shutting down their operations, which we should shut down their operations.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, who wants to show up tomorrow morning at the Wellington yard and shut down their operations? Marilyn Garrett's up. Maryland's down. But yeah, this is really what needs to happen, and it just doesn't ring true when there's such a police response for such a small number or even a large number of peaceful protesters protesting, you know, what is essentially an illegal act. And that is why we're recalling the sheriff, and that is why we're asking every one of you in here to volunteer to collect signatures, even if it's just taking 1 or 2 sheets and getting your friends and family to sign. I would like nothing better than if to have a dialogue with Sheriff Wowak and have him, you know, come up here and say, wow, like I didn't realize that stuff. I didn't quite get that, and that would be honest, and that would be welcomed. And I think if we started seeing enforcement, we probably wouldn't be so keen on a recall. It probably wouldn't seem quite so urgent or necessary, and it wouldn't seem necessary to put our resources behind that. But because we don't have law enforcement on the side of the public, who have overwhelmingly opposed these things, by the way, in every poll, in every, there's just been a massive uprising that's growing by the day, not only in California but across the country, against this meter program. And, you know, there are people that are saying it's intentional, the harm that's being done. They're saying there's whispers growing louder that it's a matter of population control. There's whispers growing louder that older people are dying off after these meters are installed. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna stand here and say that that's definitely happening. I don't know. I haven't seen the evidence. I'm certainly not going to rule it out. But what I can say right now is that the harm caused and inflicted by the smart meter program right now is intentional. It might not have started out that way, but there is compelling enough evidence that people are being harmed by this program and that they've had ample opportunity to call it off, but they haven't done so, and that makes it intentional. And so I think we've got to, if we don't have the sheriff on our side, we can't wait 4.5 months or whatever it is to collect the signatures to recall the sheriff, to have a new sheriff in, because by then all the smart meters are going to be in. You know, we're looking at having to defend our communities ourselves. And that's not something Americans or the Western world at all is used to. You know, we've grown complacent. We assume that our military is going to protect us from any enemies, or that the FBI is going to protect us from terrorists. We're not used to the idea of organizing with our neighbors to protect ourselves against corporations. It certainly has happened, and it continues to happen. But we have trust, misplaced or not, that the powers that be have our best interests at heart, or at least wouldn't do something that is so egregiously damaging to us. But I think that given the facts and given the ongoing installations and given the ongoing reports of people being harmed, if we want to protect our communities and we don't want to get cancer and we don't want to see our pets harmed and we don't want to see the plants in our yards die and we don't want to see the people who we love die an early death, we are obligated to organize, even if it's just your neighbor and you, having a compact saying we're going to look out for each other, we're going to look out if Wellington comes, we're going to be aware. I mean, I have this button on, which are anti-smart meter button, and I was at a store earlier, and they said, oh yeah, I got my smart meter the other day, and we started talking, and I started telling them about it, and they're like, yeah, it's funny, since it got installed, I've been getting these headaches, and I'm like, the ones right here in your temple, and they're like, yeah, how did you know? So our suspicion is that a lot of people are suffering from the radiation, but may not be connecting it. They might just be like, oh, pop a couple ibuprofen and a couple of sleeping pills and forget about it. But it is happening and it is real. We're not crazy. We're not tinfoil hat loonies, although I could use a tinfoil hat. And I would actually just like a show of hands of how many people have been feeling effects from these meters since they went in, just in the room here. So maybe about between 10 and 20% in the room. So, and the thing is, as people get more exposed to these things, they're becoming more sensitive. And what's interesting, and I'll just leave you with this, with a thought, and that there are these new studies that are coming out that show that pulsed microwave radiation is more damaging and induces more of a biological effect than constant microwave radiation like you'll see from a Wi-Fi or a cell phone. That pulsed radiation causes more of an effect. And this is in peer-reviewed scientific studies. You'll see this, you can read this. So the question is why, surely they know about this stuff, they've read the studies. Why would they be putting these devices that put out pulse microwave radiation when all the scientific studies are indicating that this is dangerous and produces an effect? I'm just asking the question. But anyway, I've probably talked long enough, and I think people are really interested to hear what our sheriff has to say. Do we want to take questions together? And okay, I think I just wanted to say that we really do need people mobilizing, gathering signatures. We have forms tonight. Michael Boyd he's a resident of SoCal, and he's been instrumental in helping to facilitate this recall effort. And if you are interested in gathering signatures, we have forms here you can pick up. You have to be a registered voter in Santa Cruz County in order to qualify. And if you want to contact Dondi, raise your hand. Talk to Dondi to not only to get the forms, but also to return the forms once they've been filled in. And we just want to make sure that they're all registered voters that we're getting, so we have high quality return. And the opportunity here is to really use this recall effort as a means to educate the public about the issue. Oh yeah, the smart meter, I got one in my house. Well, did you know, the World Health Organization, that they're 100 times stronger than cell phones? Did you know that they're damaging? You have a right to get this thing taken off your house if it's hurting you. You don't have to suffer needlessly in your home or be kicked out of your home. You can get it removed. So yeah, it's a really great opportunity to reach out to the public, to get more people mobilized, and we can stop this thing. Even if they get Santa Cruz County 100% installed, there's no reason why we shouldn't have a mass movement building to not only get rid of the smart meters and to reduce the exposure to wireless technology in our county, but to get the county and our cities to go forward with a public power plan and reject the monopoly utility industry as a whole and get renewable, affordable energy that serves the public, because PG&E and the utilities are out of control. And this is just the latest episode. And basically, it's going to be like, how bad does it need to get before it gets to that level where we need to kick them out and generate our own power in a safe way that serves the public? Anyway, I'll leave it there, and I think we'll take questions. I'll hand it back over to Ellie.
Thank you, Josh. So the next period here, we're actually having an opportunity for a question and answer period with Joshua Hart and Sheriff Phil Wowak. I'd like to invite Sheriff Phil Wowak to come on up.
Boy, can that guy speak. Not only is he passionate, but he's very educated and very articulate. This is the first time Josh and I have ever been able to get together. He's absolutely right. His group has tried to engage my office, and I've been unable to sit with them. What Josh has told you about the ordinance with the Board of Supervisors is correct. Your County Board of Supervisors enacted a moratorium for the installation of PG&E smart meters in the County of Santa Cruz in response to their constituents, you. Unfortunately, the ordinance and the moratorium that the Board of Supervisors has enacted is the lowest level of legal recourse in the state of California, and it does not have jurisdiction over the California Public Utilities Commission, which is why I've directed my staff not to enforce the ordinance on PG&E installers, but to keep the peace. To keep the peace, okay? When a PG&E installer or a Wellington installer is on a property and they are asked to leave, they must do so. And if they refuse to do so and law enforcement is called, we will escort that person off the property at the direction of the property owner, okay? At this point, we do not allow the blockade or the public access of anyone in public who is demonstrating, even peacefully, against installers. It would be very similar to if a group were to come here today and to stand outside the doors of the Grange Hall and to try and block you all from coming in here and having a public meeting. If you were to call us, we would come and we would arrest those folks for blocking your rights. And that is what we do when we're called to a public demonstration. Our role is to keep the peace. Now, I can't debate science. I'm not a rocket scientist. Everything that Josh says has great passion and great science to back it up. But that's not my role. That's not what I was elected for, and that's not what I do in law enforcement. I wrote a couple of quick notes so that I wanted you to know that I was actually paying attention and that I really do feel and understand your cause. I really do. I wish there was something more that I could do for you, but unfortunately we're probably going to have to agree to disagree. I can't use law enforcement resources to give a criminal record to an employee doing the job at the direction of their supervisor that is authorized by a state commission, okay? That would be a very great waste of not only the criminal justice system and the legal system and the office of the district attorney and the superior court, but it would also jeopardize the criminal record and the personal integrity of the person that gets arrested for doing their job, okay? So that's one of the reasons that I've chosen not to enforce the ordinance. The other is because the ordinance does not have and does not trump the Public Utilities Commission.
It's inaccurate.
Now, I understand your recall effort, and you have every right to do so, and you've done it very, very professionally, okay? And I issued my 200-word response to the recall effort. I encourage you to use the recall effort in every way possible to get notoriety to your cause. But I do want you to know that the recall effort, in my opinion, okay, is a use of your resources that could be directed in a way to achieve your end and to get victory. If you were to use the combined effort that you have to run this recall and get this issue before a civil court judge where it belongs. It doesn't belong in criminal court. This issue does not belong in making individual citizens of our county documented criminals. This issue belongs in front of a judge in a robe in civil court where he decides whether or not PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission has the right to do what they're doing in Santa Cruz County. Plain and simple, that's why I've chosen to act the way I have. Now again, I have to say, I'm probably not going to please you all, and I completely understand that. And that's why we live here. That's why we love Santa Cruz, that's why we live in America. We have that right. So having said that, I'd be happy to stand here with Josh and take any questions that you have. Again, I don't want to debate the science. I do want you to understand the resources that we have at the Sheriff's Office and what we intend on doing, and our mission is to keep the peace. I don't want any kind of passionate debate like this to become violent, and that's my role. Thank you. Mr. Boyd.
There were 3 other issues on the recall petition besides the smart meter issue. The first being the diversion of property tax revenues from schools to redevelopment debt for $44 million sheriff's station, which after financing is going to be roughly $88 million once it's fully paid off. That was one of the issues, is that your support of monies going to redevelopment instead of schools, which is what the property tax was intended for. The other issue had to do with the escaped convict, that you apparently understaffed with one female officer to watch, and then the lady that disappeared into the backwoods in, I think it was December, that was missing for like 6 days, and her family had to go out there, and our neighbors had to go find her, and your office said they didn't have sufficient resources to even mount a search party. Could you address those other 3 issues, please?
Absolutely. So did everybody hear the question or what Mr. Boyd said? The recall petition that you will be asked to sign has essentially three specific reasons that they want to put my off for. 4 incidents, separate incidents that they want to put me on the ballot to be recalled. The first is the non-enforcement of the smart meter issue. The second is the redevelopment agency, or the abolishment of redevelopment agencies by the governor earlier this year, and how Santa Cruz County voted to expend the remaining funds left in a redevelopment agency. When I took office in 2009, I immediately started a campaign on improvement of the Sheriff's Office to better serve you and all of Santa Cruz County. My goal was to move the Sheriff's Office from where it is now in the city of Santa Cruz, deep in the heart of city of Santa Cruz, where they have their own police department, and move it to Live Oak, where I have now purchased property down the road from here, and bring police services more accessible to all of the county of Santa Cruz. I lobbied very hard and worked with the Board of Supervisors and went to public meetings, a number of them that were held here in Live Oak, to try and find out what would be the best possible expenditure of redevelopment agency funds. In every one of the public meetings that I attended, and in the final count of the public meetings in Soquel and in Live Oak, public safety and the relocation of the Sheriff's Office was in the top 3 for the community. I took that information to the Board of Supervisors, who at the time in their body was the governing board of the redevelopment agency. I asked the Board of Supervisors to make the relocation of the Sheriff's headquarters and build a Center for Public Safety as one of their #1 priorities with the redevelopment agency. Before the governor proposed to abolish redevelopment agencies in the state of California, the Board of Supervisors had awarded me a $60 million project to find property, to build a new Center for Public Safety, including a crime laboratory, a new sheriff's office, a community room that would be double this size that would be available for anybody in the county of Santa Cruz, and to consolidate all of our resources. I don't want to take up all of your time in the justification for this, but there was significant justification, and in January the board voted to give me $60 million to do that, to move the sheriff's office out here to Live Oak. Subsequent to that, the state of California had a little bit of a financial crisis. In balancing the checkbook, the state of California changed the law and abolished redevelopment agencies as we knew them then. They still continue to exist in some form, but as we knew them then, they ceased to exist. So the money that I was given, or that I had been promised to build a new sheriff's facility, had been reduced from $60 million to $44 million. However, the Board of Supervisors voted to give $44 million to my office to move all and consolidate all of our resources. And again, it's right down the street here on Shannon Creek. So I didn't balk 1 second. We immediately took and started looking for what we could do with that $16 million reduction from our original plan. And we engaged in a conversation with the property owner down the street, and we are in the process of purchasing, relocating tenants, and remodeling the Live Oak Business Park, or 3 buildings in the 4 buildings of the Live Oak Business Park, so that a complete Center for Public Safety will be right in the heart of Santa Cruz County. Now, Live Oak and Soquel make up almost 35% of the population of Santa Cruz County. And it seems ludicrous for us to have your sheriff's office, the public safety providers, deep in the city of Santa Cruz. So that's why I asked to move that to this location. Now that's the second item on the list. The other 2 are 2 specific incidents that occurred a year ago. The first being an inmate that had escaped. We had an inmate in custody in Santa Cruz County Jail who had been, as we come to find out now, feigning an injury over months of time. He had seen a doctor, seen a second doctor, seen a third doctor, all while waiting to go to trial. And eventually he was given a doctor's appointment to go to Dominican Hospital for an MRI, for a scan, for an injury that he had in his shoulder. Now at the time, our policy and procedure was to have a deputy, an armed deputy, escort every prisoner to doctor's appointments, go to that doctor appointment, and then return that prisoner to county jail. On this particular day, the day that this gentleman escaped, the deputy that was assigned to do this transport was a woman. Now, I've been chastised for assigning a woman to go and supervise a man. And I can tell you right now, I cannot discriminate male, female, height, weight, anything with regard to whether or not a person can do their job. Every deputy sheriff that works for me is qualified, competent, and able to do their job. And I said publicly at the time of this escape, I think the deputy who fought this man and tried to keep him into custody did a better job than I could have, and I would have, physically. She's a phenomenal athlete, a triathlete. Unfortunately, she's probably been disabled and will not be able to return to full duty ever because of this incident. That was the third item that was on the recall and that I'm being blamed for. The fourth was, as Mr. Boyd said, was a woman who was lost in Felton. She left her home around Thanksgiving, and her family told us 3 or 4 days into her disappearance that she likes to go to these 4 specific county parks. Now, she lived in Felton, and they told us she normally goes to Henry Cowell, Fall Creek State Park, but she likes Nisene Marks, and she likes Big Basin. We did a hasty search of those parks with the State Parks Department, and we did the searches that we thought would be fruitful. But it was very similar, in my opinion, at the time, of closing your eyes and throwing a dart at the wall to figure out where she would have been. And so we never, and it was never that we didn't have the resources to do it, it was that we never mobilized all of our resources to any specific area because she was missing somewhere else in the world other than her front porch. Fortunately for her, not for me and not for anybody else in the county, but fortunately for her, 2 people found her on the 5th or 6th day that she was in the forest. Okay? And she essentially walked up to the rescuers, kind of collapsed, and was carried out of there. Spent a few days in the hospital for hypothermia and a little bit of malnutrition, but she's safe and fine today. Again, part of the recall effort is that I inappropriately mishandled that incident. And for the last 2, I have to tell you, I cannot go back in time and change what happened. We did change some of the practices for the things that we do. We do now do medical transports with 2 deputy sheriffs. That costs you and it costs me, but we do it for the safety of the community. And at the time, we thought we were doing the best possible thing we could. Mr. Arnold.
Yes, this last week, the county got what brings up to $6.5 million towards Homeland Security. And we see a lot of meshing of law enforcement, joint councils for the judiciary and so forth. And we're concerned about making the police local and not becoming nationalized police or letting the feds set the policy here. Is there some resistance among the local police chiefs and entities to remain local and defend their sovereignty?
I believe the Homeland Security funds that you're talking about were the grant funds that came locally to the different police departments for different infrastructure upgrades. And I was a recipient over the last 3 years of thousands of dollars of Homeland Security grants. So I can't answer the second half of your question, is there a unified effort to keep the federal government out and to stay localized? Because no, we cooperate very well with the federal government. We do receive Homeland Security grants for infrastructure upgrades. The federal government, a number of years back, almost 10 years ago, mandated that there be a consolidation of radio equipment and a narrow banding, if you will, of all radio systems that are in place today across the United States, whether it's for a garbage company, a police agency, a news agency, anyone. They had to do a narrow banding and upgrade of their radio infrastructure. In Santa Cruz County, that was initially estimated to be over $21 million. We didn't have the money in Santa Cruz County to do it. So we applied for Homeland Security grants, and I've been the recipient of a number of grants, and I've been able to, through grants with the federal government, accomplish all of those upgrades without using one tax dollar. So that's what that money has gone to. Yes, sir.
Yeah, to get back to the smart meter issue, as far as arresting individual Wellington installers, I can understand some of the theory there, but what about the actual installation yard, which is located right in the heart of Santa Cruz County, which is your jurisdiction? So not arresting any individual, just shutting the yard down and just saying this is against our ordinance and we don't approve you actually installing and operating out of our county.
So the question was, why don't I go in to the yard at Portola and shut down the business that's there and stop them?
Yeah.
And as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to have to agree to disagree on this, but the Board of Supervisors Ordinance 5084 does not trump the California Public Utilities Commission, and that yard has every right to operate as if Starbucks does that's down the street. And I cannot go in and capture a business and stop them from doing so.
They are installing.
You have a follow-up? Hang on, he has a follow-up.
You swore an oath to the Constitution. I won't shut up.
Sorry.
Use your hand.
Okay,
Let's recall this bureaucrat.
that's not helping.
Okay, one at a time.
Out of here.
Yes.
At what this is what's confusing for us as citizens. At what point, what would they have to do? For right now, it just sounds, I can't think of a better word, but this impotent. It just, at what point does the sheriff step in and say, hey, you guys are crossing a line? Where do you draw the line as sheriff personally? Are you offended that they're actually just trampling our laws and